We can draw straws. Okay, thank you, Tom.
So just to give you a bit of a background, I guess I came into my postdoc in a slightly unusual way in that I originally did an undergrad degree in biochemistry in the UK, enrolled on a PhD, changed my mind, decided to go traveling instead, so went traveling for a year, came back, worked in publishing, but couldn't resist the draw of doing a PhD, so eventually went back to London, University College London, did a PhD, and after finishing it, ended up here. And so I arrived here in April, haven't been here long, and just so top of mind advice, I guess that for me the most important advice is just that, and I think you know this already, you're doing PhDs here, it's no different doing a postdoc, but who you know is really important, and the contacts that you build while you're doing a PhD are quite likely going to help you get your postdoc. You know, I think that trust is the currency of science, and so you need to build up relationships with people, make people trust you, and find people that you trust and you're happy to work with. And for me, that's the most important thing in finding a postdoc, just getting to know people and finding out who you would like to work with and who you'd trust. And also, I think it helps, partly because it helps you build up a network of people to work with, but it helps if you are more than just your papers, so try and find academic interests. So my interest is open data and open access to research, and I think that really helped me build up a community of contacts, and that really helped me end up where I am now.
Hi, my name is Piyush Jain. So I did my bachelor's in pharmacy from India. Then right after that, I had decided to do PhD, so I came over to United States. I did my PhD from University of Missouri in Kansas City. During my PhD, I was lucky enough to get a very great mentor. So he actually helped me all throughout the process of application of postdoc fellowships or applications in general. So he was very much close to me, and he guided me through each step. So I was very lucky about that. So for me, it was very easy. At the same time, he made me become like, he actually helped me to make this process very easy for me. So I would suggest my recommendation, what I learned from him is that when you are applying for postdocs, because you can go through either people from your different papers you will find in your field, or you will find people whom you meet during conferences, or like you have attended their seminars. Make some good networking contacts with them, be in touch, try to ask good questions, and when you apply, I have very good tip which I'll give you at the end. So so that's my advice, that you actually have to find the right place to begin your postdoc at first. So once you find out that, okay, you like this area of interest, then you can apply in that. And then I have some tips about how to apply, and I can discuss later. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Zoey Fonseca-Kelly. I am currently a Senior Program Director for Faculty Appointments at Harvard Medical School. And in short, basically, I'm responsible for promoting all of the associate professors to full professors at the medical school for both the quad-based faculty and all of the hospitals. So about my background, I'm originally from Ireland, which is where I did my PhD. And I like to preface these types of talks by saying, if I'd known then what I know now, I think my career would have been very different. I'm happy where I am currently, but it has been a definite journey getting here. I decided to keep doing research, and I probably should have just quit at the first start. And I can attribute to that to not having had a great mentor or a great experience during my PhD, and that's kind of an ongoing theme, unfortunately, for a lot of my science career. Not all of it, but I will say that's critically important, be it while you're doing your PhD or making sure that you find a great mentor for your postdoc if you haven't had a great experience. And even if you had, it's still early days in terms of your training. So I then went to Singapore for a couple of years and did a postdoc there, and that was a horrible experience. I mean, living in Singapore was great, and I traveled, but my postdoc wasn't great. And I left Singapore, came back to Ireland. I was like, I am done with science. I'm getting out. And I tried to kind of leave and get a job in the UK doing consulting, through one of the scientific consulting firms. It happened to be summer, everything was slowing down, and I had a friend who was working in Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia who was basically working crazy hours trying to get this Nature paper out the door. And I said, well, I'm not doing anything. Why don't I come and be a pair of hands? I don't know anything about immunology, which is what she was doing. But I said, I know how to pipette. So over I came, and I stayed, and I'm still here, and that was about 7 years ago. So I did a postdoc there. Again, the mentor that we had wasn't great at that point in time. I kind of jumped ship to a collaborator of ours at UPenn. And again, at that point, I had a very frank conversation with the person I was working with saying, I do not want to be, a PI. I knew at that point in time I did not want to be a PI. And he said, well, I kind of need a lab manager, but I also kind of need somebody to do experiments. Why don't you do a bit of both? So it wasn't 100% pressure on me to do research. I said, sure. And just to preface all of this, I was on J1 visas at all of this time, so my opportunities to do different things and actually get out of the lab for anybody that's international was quite challenging. And I'm going to keep going and then I'll jump back a little bit. My now husband and I then came to Boston. He got an opportunity to come up here. We subsequently got married. I got a green card, yay. And I was then able to get a real job at Harvard Medical School doing what I'm doing now. Along that path, what I discovered, which was very frustrating, is that unless you can apply for, that exceptional scholar green card type, the visa, it's very hard to get companies to hire you. Most companies or institutions do not hire foreign nationals on either a H1, maybe a H1, but certainly not green card. At the same time, this speaks to what others have said. I got heavily involved initially with my local Postdoctoral Association and then with the National Postdoc Association, where I've had various leadership roles over the past couple of years. And I'm partly here representing them and myself today. And that has been absolutely invaluable because that gave me the skills and the contacts, which I can't emphasize enough, to have skills to go and do something different. You can't, as scientists, we can be, not all of us, but we can be very single-minded and think, well, if I stay in the lab, whatever kind of lab it is, and I produce lots of papers, I'm going to be fine, and then I will be a professor at X university. But it doesn't work like that at all, and it certainly doesn't work like that anymore. It's really hard to make it in science these days, no matter what your field. Some fields are better. So while I will say absolutely stay, publish, and have great aspirations to stay, you also need to take the time to work on other skills, interests that make you marketable and transferable if you want to go and do something different. And that different can be pretty much anything. It could be going to industry. It could be going to, become an editor at a journal. It could be going into other types of scientific writing. It could be going into higher ed administration, which is what I'm doing. And it really, and I know you're in your PhDs, most of you, and you're about to hit a postdoc and you're thinking, oh no, that's crazy. But I cannot, say enough about doing something else as even if it's just as a backup plan. And even if it's not as a backup plan, you need all of those skills to be a successful PI. You're going to have difficult conversations with people that you hire and potentially fire in a lab. You're going to have to know how to run a budget, write grants, so you need good writing skills. And again, to get those jobs, the first, postdoc, the second postdoc, you need good presentation and communication skills so that when you go to conferences, you can network with people who are going to be potentially your next employer or the person that writes the reference for you. So I'm going to stop there and let other people introduce themselves. I've lots of other gems to share, but just happy to answer questions also at the end.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Reza. I am doing my postdoc here at MIT. I am at second year working on heat transfer and fluid flow. I did my PhD back in Australia, and I think one of the advice that I'm going to give you, same as the others, as Tom, Piyush, and Zoey mentioned, I think you should know people. I think that's the most important thing. You should have a connection. You should go to conferences and expose yourself. I think that's your responsibility. No one else is going to do that. That's just yours, that you should go to the conferences knowing different people, and I think those connections make a difference, because it gets to the stage that everyone is good, everyone has a publication, everyone graduated from a good university, and it comes to the point that you should know the people that you want to apply to, and I think everyone else is agree with that. Mm-hmm. But apart from that, I want to bring two more points, which I think very important. First of all, I think you should clear your objective, like what you want to do. I mean, not just start a postdoc and at the middle of the way decide, oh, did I do it right or not? So I think it's very important to clear your objective, find the area that you want to work on, find the person that you want to work on, and try to get there. I think it's very important to have an objective, to have a goal, and clear it for yourself. And then the other one is take a risk. I mean, I went to UK, I started a PhD there. After 6 months, I quit because I didn't like it. It was hard for me, but I did it, and then I moved to Australia, and I love it, you know. So I think taking a risk is very important as well. That's another advice that I'm going to give you. And then I would be happy to answer any question after Marzi introduces herself.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to give a bit of a background to myself, and then you can ask me some questions. So my name's Marzia, and I did my PhD at University College London, and I did my field is neuroscience. And this is actually my second postdoc. I've been here since April. My first postdoc was in Washington, D.C., in a children's hospital, so I worked in a clinical background. And then I moved here mainly because I wanted someone to give me a really good, clear direction about how to become a PI. And I work for someone called Paola Allotta, and she's an incredible female scientist, and that's something that's very important to me. And she runs a lab, a very successful lab, and she has a family as well. And that's something else that I think is very important when you're going into a postdoc, because it is going to be the next stage of your life. And you need to, my best advice is you need to find some sort of balance as well. The way I found Paola is she's doing really innovative techniques, and something that I can take away with me to start my own lab. And the next piece of advice, which really helps, is find someone that can really help you also with fellowship applications to when you want to start your own lab. And also do something that really challenges you, something that you find exciting, and talk to people at conferences, get their advice. And the other thing that someone told me that was really helpful is, has your PI generated other PIs? Look at their backgrounds. See if they're helping the people in their lab apply for jobs. That's incredibly important, because if they're not doing that, it's possible that they're not going to be the best person that's going to take you to that next level. So really look into their background as well. Talk to their, so if I was going to a conference now, I would maybe ask one of the people in their lab out for lunch. Just ask them informally what it's like. Somebody that used to be in the lab is also really useful. So just in a very casual setting, ask them a series of questions, nothing personal, just really kind of to get a general idea, what's the atmosphere like. And I would hope most people are going to be really honest with you what it's like to work there. And then also look at the PI's publication record. That's the other thing that I chose my boss for as well. And it really helped me in my first postdoc and for my PhD, that both the supervisors that I had were really incredible people, but also they publish really well. And that will really help you when you do get to the stage where you want to get your manuscript prepared. They'll really help you with that as well. So I'll leave it at that, and if you guys got any questions, anything you want to ask.
All right. Okay. Okay, so just want to open it up for questions that you may have. I have some starter questions if this is an area that you would, if you're kind of slow to warm up or whatever. But I just want to open it up for you. When you came today, what questions do you have? And I'll bring the microphone over for you so we can. Okay. Just to repeat it for everyone, so that I believe you could hear it, but you just wanted to see how many applications you sent out, how many offers you got, what was that process like?
I sent out 6 applications, and I received offers for interviews for 3, and I got all 3 offers actually. So I think the way I decided to pick up those 6 was from 100 faculty members. So I made a list of 100 plus faculty members, and I looked at their profiles. I ranked them according to my priorities. Like I chose achievements of the faculties as one of the parameter, and also like what they publish and what area they are in. I was open to both chemistry and biology and the combinations of chemistry, biology, or bioengineering. So I picked up the top 6, and so the plan was to send out 6 application packets at once. So same day I sent out 6, and then I waited for like several days, and after a few months I heard back from like 3 of them for interview. I also heard back from the other 3, which they deferred or they said no because we don't have lab space. So.
Sure. I actually only ever sent out 2 applications, and that was for my postdoc for Singapore. And I interviewed, I want to say it's been so long ago, but I think I only phone interviewed for 1, maybe, no, just 1, and that was it. And I got that job, and I took that job. One thing I will say is that I changed field at that time because I was bored with cancer research at the time, and I jumped into the stem cell field. It was not my best move. Move countries, move field. It was a little bit too much. I think I would have had a more successful postdoc if I'd stayed in my field. So just not saying that you shouldn't take risks, but just be cautious. Like if you have to start all over again and do all of the reading from scratch, it's going to make for a very slow and difficult start to your postdoc. And then the rest of my postdocs I got just from knowing people.
So for me, I think I applied for 3, and then I got 2 interviews, and I got accepted in both of them. But I should say that for getting those 3, I sent, I think, more than 200 emails to different professors. So it's same as PhD. I don't know how you get to your PhD program, but if you want to find a supervisor for a PhD, you have to just send an email to different people. So yeah, for me it was it was a bit challenging finding the right person, but at the end of the day, I end up doing like I put 3 applications, and then 2 of them get back to me, and I got accepted in both of them.
I found my first postdoc through my PhD supervisor. So he actually worked for my PhD supervisor when he was just starting out his postdoc, and he's now working in a clinical environment in DC. And my second postdoc was at a conference. So I got given a really good piece of advice by my first supervisor, my first postdoc supervisor, and find someone who's going to be a good mentor. So I found Paola's people in her lab at a conference, and I spoke to them, and I heard some really great things from lots of people, that she's a really good mentor and she's really, really good. So word of mouth is one of the things I'd look out for. And if you find people saying, don't go to that lab, to a different person, just don't save yourself, and don't, if somebody says something negative, it's kind of a sign that maybe you shouldn't go there. And I definitely word of mouth. And if you do want to change fields, now's the time, because when you become a postdoc, you're on a kind of a path that you want to set out for yourself. And some people sometimes want to do a postdoc to learn a technique, so you can apply what you've learned before to a completely new field. So I've completely changed area, not completely changed. I'm still in neuroscience, but I'm doing something a bit different, and I'm really enjoying it. So it could be a bit of a gamble, but I'm so far really enjoying it. And the other thing that I'd look out for is find somewhere where the atmosphere in the lab is really good. That is the key thing, because you're going to have to be in there working really long hours sometimes. And the place I am at now, everyone's really great, and it really makes everything so much better, because you can laugh with your coworkers, or depending on what atmosphere you like. Yeah, I'd say that's another really important thing, is finding somewhere where there's a really good atmosphere, because sometimes your boss will travel, they won't be there. It's your colleagues that you need to rely on. So yeah, that's how I found the place.
Yeah, so I decided fairly early on during my PhD that I wanted to come to Professor Mark's lab, the lab I'm in now. And so I sent out one application, and it was to the lab, and I was accepted. I was very fortunate that the relationship was there. You know, it made it easier. I think that if I didn't have the relationship with the lab, I would have struggled to have found, it would have been a lot harder to find a postdoc, and it would have involved lots of contacting people. So I think that's, for me, why knowing people is helpful, and building those relationships during your PhD is important.
So I have a suggestion for applying for postdocs. When you are choosing faculty members, you can choose faculty members like whom you like, but the application process is slightly different approach what I followed. Instead of emailing everyone, what I did, I actually prepared application packet. Once I knew that, okay, I like this person, I want to work in this lab, I want to get interviewed, I actually prepared a hard copy of a letter, cover letter, CV, and all my manuscript first pages. I sent them through mail to them, addressing them basically. So it's each tailored specifically for their lab. And then after like 3 or 4 days, when the mail arrives to them, right? Then that's when I emailed everyone and said that, oh, I sent you out a hard letter, you can, this is my application through email, and maybe if you like my profile, please respond to me. And I think that approached, and that helped me actually in terms of getting the postdoc position.
And the other way that I did it as well, so I went to a conference, and I had a poster, and I emailed the PIs at that time to please come to my poster and stop by. And that was really good, because it happened that like 1 or 2 came every hour. So it was a long poster session, and they got a chance to get to know me. I got to speak to them for a while. They asked me lots of questions, and it was a great experience. So that if I did go there for an interview, it was more relaxed, because I'd already spoken to them. They knew my background. So that's another way where you can have a big block of people you're really interested in. If there's a big conference in your field going on, is to send out loads of emails.
Okay. Yes, our next question.
Can you comment on the difference between applying a postdoc as a PI directly and applying a fellowship as a department and get a postdoc in terms of timeline?
Okay, I'll repeat the question so everybody might be able to hear it. But what's the question was about applying to a PI directly, or if it's the different timeline potentially than applying for, say, a fellowship or other areas.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I understand this particularly well, but I mean, for me, the lab will usually have some funding, and they will advertise. They will be looking. Generally, labs will be looking out for postdocs continuously if they have some funding to support research. And so at the moment, that's how I'm paid for by the lab's fund. And then really throughout the year, you see fellowships being advertised. I'm just putting together an application for one now. And so, I mean, I guess you could apply for the fellowship yourself now with the intention of moving straight into it when you finish your PhD, or you can look out for positions and then continuously, once you're in that role, look out for fellowships to apply for.
I would advise kind of for you to start looking into postdocs a year before you finish, at least, because if there is somebody that really wants to have you in their lab, it gives them a chance to apply for money for you as well. So there's lots of grants that they can apply for to give them money for a postdoc. So give them that time frame to apply for money as well. And there's so many postdoc applications out there for people that are just starting. So there's loads of universities you can apply for, loads of external, loads of international. There's so many applications depending on your field. So really look at them and build deadlines for yourself. So have like a list of ones that you really want to apply for. Say that to the person in the email as well. Say that you're willing to apply for fellowships, especially for someone you really want to work for. So I would put that in there as well, just to give them an understanding that you're quite keen to do that.
I think just it's not particularly to do with deadlines, but I think it's just a theme that's kind of coming across, is that you have to take almost as or equal responsibility for your career as you would hope that your mentor now or when as your postdoc mentor is going to have interest in your career. I don't think, we shouldn't assume, or one shouldn't assume, that you can sit back, do your postdoc, and that your postdoc advisor will somehow magically put you into your first assistant professor role or whatever it might be, or your next postdoc. They should absolutely help, which, absolutely speaks to what was said about you need to look at their track record. Are they themselves promoting the careers of their, the younger people in their lab? But equally, you have to have responsibility for your own career. The NPA, the National Postdoc Association, has a lot of resources that can help you. There's one called, and you don't have to use it, verbatim, but it's called the Individual Development Plan. And there's one that is now with, I think it's myidp.com. It's with Science Careers used it. Is that right? And it basically, and you can use it now. It's more focused towards postdocs, but it's this kind of a plan. Like, how are you going to get to the next step? And for example, the first year of your postdoc, you can say, I'm going to go to one conference and I'm going to give 2 talks on my institution and I'm going to apply for 1 fellowship. And in my second year, I'm going to write a paper. And you can sit down and have that conversation with your mentor, kind of day 1 or, day 30 into your postdoc. And, and again, a kind of a warning sign, if that conversation isn't taken well from your mentor, maybe you need to consider, is this person going to be the best possible person for you to spend the next 2 to 3 years working with? Because if they brush it off, or if they say, oh no, I don't think you can go to any conferences, you're just here to work for me, then that would be a huge warning sign to get out and find something else pretty quickly. So, taking equal responsibility for your career is very important.
I think one other thing to keep in mind is the clock starts ticking when you finish your PhD, and so some of the fellowships, the junior fellowships, will only allow you to apply within 3 years or 5 years of completing your first year. Yeah, so it is. I think you do need to take responsibility for the applications yourself. Like, I've been an idiot. I saw the perfect fellowship a couple of months ago and just completely didn't keep track of the deadline. Had full intentions to apply and then just completely forgot. And I feel like it was quite stupid.
I think sometimes visa can also affect your fellowship applications.
Yeah.
Because I'm on a visa through which I can't even apply for fellowships. If I apply, then I will be it will be problematic. Basically.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Could that mic be made a little bit louder?
This one here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can move it forward as well.
Yeah. I have a question regarding the age of when you finish your postdoc, your PhD, sorry. So some people finish around 33, 35. So is that too late to start a postdoc, or do you think doesn't matter, or what is your thoughts about this?
So I'm 37, and I've only just started my postdoc because I spent lots of time out of research, working in publishing and data analysis. So I haven't noticed yet that it's a problem. Usually when people talk about junior researchers, they talk about the state you are in the academic career ladder, I guess, rather than your physical age. I'm not sure whether it's a problem, but I haven't noticed it being a problem yet, other than I feel a bit old.
I don't think it's a problem. I mean, as I said, if your objective is clear and you know what you want to do, I don't think age is a problem.
I think maintaining family could be a problem, but you have to consider that if you have a family, then you have to consider that when you are applying for postdocs, the salary is not much. As we are trying to increase with National Postdoctoral Association is working on improving the salary of postdocs in general. But that's something to keep in mind. But besides that, I don't think the age matters. Right?
And kind of on that note, as a postdoc, look at the lab and look where, what research the PI is doing, et cetera, but also definitely consider the institution and what their benefits for postdocs are. Now, in fairness, since the NPA started in 2003, most institutions do offer health insurance for postdocs. Prior to the NPA's existence, most did not. That's huge, having health insurance, especially in this country. There isn't most places, and I would hesitate to put a number, but I would probably say 95%, if not more, places don't offer retirement for postdocs or any kind of plan that you can put money into. So, you're at 37 or you're 30 or whatever, and you still have no retirement started. So, and the salaries are small. It's not like squirreling away, 10% of your postdoc salary is going to, actually be possible, particularly depending on where you're living. And again, this is oftentimes the stage in your life where it is the most likelihood where you're going to either think about getting married, if you're not already married, having a family, just because of that 30 to 35 age which you could be. So again, looking at everything that an institution has to offer and how you're going, thinking about how you're going to do that, is something to consider as well. Like, do you set yourself a timeline? Okay, if I haven't made it in whatever way you want to say that in 3 years, I'm going to go to industry and earn a salary that will allow me to support my family, and that could be you or your partner, whatever way it works. Just something else to consider. And again, I'm just saying that I'm not keeping on trying to plug the NPA, but there are resources on a postdoc's guide to maternity and paternity leave and pregnancy and negotiating all of that. So again, I'd encourage you to look at the website, but that is something else to think about, the benefits that you will get or not as a postdoc.
I will also add that MIT a few years ago started career services for postdocs, and Bob Dolan is our postdoc advisor, and so he's been in that role for 2 years, and he's very popular. So those kind of services can be very valuable as well. I do think it's also important for me to let you know that you can use the career services office 18 months after graduation. So it's not like you have to see us for a resume review or something right before graduation. We provide that service in our office of GECD 18 months after graduation. And then there's the alumni office that can help you as well. And you have access to job boards and those resources as an alum of MIT. And your undergraduate institution can be valuable for networking as well. So, yes.
Job market like faculty position at any point in your lives. So if you could touch upon that with respect to what does it matter, the name of the advisor that you had, PhD postdoc, and or the quality of the letter that you got from that guy. Whether it's better to go to a good university, the top professor, and get a not so shiny letter, not a bad one, but hey, it's not my best student. Or go to somewhere below maybe and get a really good letter. And what parts of your package matter at which parts of the selection process for faculty positions? They start with 500 applicants, they narrow it down to 50, and they go with 4, and then they want. So whether the name of the institution, the name of the advisor, when they look at the letter itself, what the letter actually says, and not just the name of the writer of the letter. So these are my questions. Thank you.
So I can kind of speak to this from two different perspectives, and actually from not having tried to enter the faculty job market at all myself. What I do for a living right now involves reading letters from full professors or professors across the United States and internationally, commenting on somebody at Harvard's candidacy as such for promotion. And I will say that, you know, a letter from the big name in the field, you know, does carry weight more so than somebody from a smaller university, potentially. So I think that doesn't mean that somebody from a smaller university can't have impact and this is in terms of promotion, you know, from going, you know, climbing the ranks. So, you know, it's important, but I wouldn't say it's the be all and the end all. I think what's more important is that is one letter in, as you say, 500 applications that an institution might have for one faculty position. It gets back to what was being said earlier about getting out there and networking, and hopefully maybe being the name that somebody knows already in the institution, and maybe even having other people that can write letters for you that will be included in your package. So it's not just that one person that you've worked for in the lab, but what else have you done during your postdoc? You know, did you work with the Postdoctoral Association? Did you volunteer, you know, even for a journal to write, you know, opinion pieces or blogs like for Science Careers or something? And therefore, can somebody at Science Careers write you a letter also? Because I understand it's you getting a faculty position, but what makes you unique and interesting to that people? Like if you're going to a smaller college, oftentimes you're teaching, what teaching you've done is going to be very important. So if you've taken the time during your postdoc to teach either wherever you are or at a nearby community college, do you have that letter also in your profile? And, you know, making yourself different, unique, and able to stand out from the crowd, because as was said earlier, everybody is great and you have to find a way to differentiate yourself. So that's just one perspective.
I don't have anything to add on this, unfortunately.
I can add something. I haven't applied for faculty positions, but last week in our lab, there were a couple of people who one got into Cornell and the other one in Columbia. So they spoke about how their faculty position application went through, and they were discussed. I think from my lab, from Sangeeta Bhatia's lab, she is well known. She's always on the news. That helps getting into the interview, at least making up to the interview. And after that, so I do think that if a big name or big lab or institution is on your profile, it definitely helps you to get to the interview process. But after that, it's all on your own, who you are. They will do a rigorous interview. It's a long 1 day to 2 day process. So I think that's what I feel.
Yeah, I've watched a few of my colleagues and friends go through this process, and they definitely networked a lot. They networked with every person they can think of in that field, and got really good recommendations, not just from their boss, from their boss's boss. Network. Their interview, so one of my friends' interviews lasted 3 days, and they had sessions where they were monitored while they interacted with other people. And I think the difficulty with our job, especially with mine, from my personal experience, is a lot of the times you're very focused, you're analysing, you're on your own, you're in a microscope, or you're doing something very technical, and then suddenly you have to talk a lot. So it would be good to do things where you did have to go to talks. I did a lot of talks during my PhD, and to get yourself out there. And so people remember your name, and they'll be like, oh, I remember so-and-so from that meeting, and I know that person. And it really helps when they pick up your paper, or when they see you next time, when you're in that room and you can find someone to talk to because you're in the same interview room. So I think a lot of those things is word of mouth, definitely. And having a famous boss definitely will always put you at the top. But yeah, like you'll have to go through the talk, you'll have to go do the interview thing yourself. So your boss can only get you to the front door, but you'll have to do the rest, as they said.
This panel was probably slightly biased towards communication as well, which is why we're all here.
Yeah.
Before we get to our next question, I did want to make a note that we do have a panel next week about the academic job search. So next Thursday, August 20th, we have a job search talk with faculty panelists to talk about the academic search. So that'll be next Thursday from 2 to 3:30 in 32-123. So next Thursday, the 20th, from 2 to 3 in 32-123. So that'll be a chance to get some additional perspective on that question as well. Yes?
So, as far as I know, postdoc could be done somewhere else except academia, like in national labs or in industry. So, do you have any thoughts about, have you tried to apply to these kind of positions, and what are your thoughts about?
I know someone who's doing their postdoc at Novartis, and it sounds like a very different environment to the environment we have in the lab. So where I am is very relaxed. You can turn up when you want. You can work kind of the hours you want. You can take your emails home, and you can work from home. And I think her experience is a bit different, that it's more a more commercial environment. There are more business decisions made that may affect the work you do. So perhaps you'll have less freedom. I think on the positive side, she earns more money and probably gets better benefits. And if you're thinking of working in industry in the future, then it's probably the right way to go on.
I think National Labs is a great environment if you want to do a postdoc there, because it basically paved the way for both industry and academia. So I think it's a great choice if you don't have a problem with the visa, because generally they are very restricted about the visa. So you need to have a permanent residency or have a passport. So if you don't have those obstacles, then definitely you should apply. I think it's a good choice.
Yes. Okay, I'll repeat the question. I don't know if everybody could hear, but the question was about the types of questions that were asked in your interviews, and also were you required to give a clear plan for kind of your career path or your development?
Yeah, so when I went, before I went to the interview panel, I had a very clear project path, and it was something that I was really passionate about, and fitting was interested in as well, and she really liked what I did. And I think that was a really positive sign, because she was very receptive to it, and that was a good sign that she's very dynamic, she likes people's ideas, and she's not just restricted to something she wants you to do. And that was a really good sign, because I thought, yeah, we're on the same page. And that's a time when you can see if that boss is going to help you, because at the end of the day, you want to do something that you're passionate about, but some of it has to also fit with your boss's idea. Sometimes some bosses will give you a project, and that's great, but I'd advise you to have something that you're really interested in, because it's something that you built, so it's going to be something you're passionate about. So it's good to have an idea of what you want to do, and that'll help you choose someone as well.
So I think my situation is probably, I'm not sure if it's unusual, but it's different to Maz's experience, in that I got to know my lab over a period of time. And actually most of the interviews I had, I didn't realize, I think they were interviews until afterwards, and I realized that I met up with someone from the lab in an airport, and we had a chat, and then kind of afterwards I realized that it was probably an interview, but at the time I just thought I was chatting. And then that happened a few times, and then the formal interview was felt very relaxed and very easy, and was really just a chat about what my interests were, what I'd done previously in my PhD. So I think I probably had it easier than Maz. I didn't have to go through all the really stressful stuff with a lab that I didn't know.
Sorry, go ahead. No. One thing I will say is, and again, I see this come back to essentially bite people as they're trying to climb the academic ladder. Be very, very careful of saying anything honestly bad about anybody ever, to be honest, because it will. You just don't know how that person could be somebody that's interviewing you, and you certainly don't want to ever say anything negative about where you're coming from ever. I sat in an interview. We were interviewing somebody else, and the person was bad-mouthing terribly where they were currently, and from most of our perspective, that was an instant shutdown. It's like you just can't do that. So. And this could be even you're meeting, a random person at a conference and you're complaining about something. You don't know how that could end up getting back to somebody else. So just be very careful about what you say in a negative, if you haven't had a good experience in your PhD or whatever it might be, be tactful about how you say it, or even if you say it, put a positive spin on, I'm looking forward to the next stage. And, I think one thing is to be prepared to have questions for both the PI and any other people that he or she may have you meet on that day. Because there's nothing worse when they've grilled you and then they say, so do you have any questions? Nope. So, and it can't be anything to do with salary or benefits necessarily. That's all a HR or an offer letter question. This should be, whatever, like how many conferences do your postdocs go to every year, but have questions for other people. And again, depending on the lab, they might ask you, more describe a difficult situation. It's unlikely to happen in this kind of an interview, but, be prepared. They may ask you for your 5-year career plan and what is it. So again, have an answer for that. They may ask you what teaching they've done, if that institution department, does ask their postdocs to do teaching, or, what kind of supervision, if any, did you have a summer student during your PhD? So just, be prepared for anything, really. Go ahead.
So I interviewed in 3 labs. All of them were slightly different. In first lab, it's mostly, all 3 labs had, first of all, the commonality that all of them involve talking to each student. So I interviewed with each person of the lab, and then they at the end, or like in between some time, like you will do a presentation, and then you will meet the faculty person and you would just talk to him in person. And the faculty person, he can ask you questions about your plans, or could be one faculty member actually asked me to send out a white paper, which means you have to have a project in mind you want to do as a postdoc. Which is a nice thing if you want to do your own project. Sometimes you are comfortable in that, and sometimes it could be other way around, because like you want a project in hand. As you guys suggested earlier. So I think it depends on like who you are, but in general, like there are several. Most of the questions were related to science for me, as per my experience.
The other thing I would think about is that people look on your LinkedIn profile. You'd be surprised when I applied for jobs at Harvard, suddenly my LinkedIn profile was being looked at every other day. And people do Google you as well. So if you do things outside of research, it's good because it adds to your profile. If you have good papers, that's on Google when they Google you. So look at your LinkedIn profile, think about other things you can add. Do those kind of things, because that's the first thing people sometimes do, is they will look at certain online things as well.
I think in my case it was more close to Tom, so because I think it goes back again to networking, because I knew my supervisor that I am working now from the past, and he knew my research, so he already knew what I was doing, He was very familiar with what I was doing. I was familiar with what he was doing, and they had a project, and then he just asked me a couple of questions, like, if there is difficulty in this part, what you're going to do, and then I provide him with the answer. So it was very unofficial, but I think it goes back again to networking. If you know the guy for a long time and you know what's his research, what he's doing in his lab, and then if he know you as well, so it would make it much more easier.
I think one other thing that just springs to mind, partly through seeing now people being interviewed in our lab, is that you need to treat everyone you meet within the lab with respect and kind of be aware that they will all give feedback. It doesn't matter if it's admin staff or if it's a graduate student who happens to be working in the lab who chats to you. Probably all those people will feed into the person making the decision on the hire. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind.
And obviously don't forget to send a thank you. You know, one of the things that I heard years ago was don't forget to send a thank you to the person that sets up your interview. So again, to the admin. You would be surprised at how much weight that will carry as well.
Sorry, follow-up question. I have no idea how other people, not my subfield, how good they are. So I don't know in sensor networks who's the best person, although I'm also in electrical engineering. How do you think when you apply for a job and there are 50 faculty in a specific department, how can they gauge whether your advisor, how good is he or she, other than, oh, he's in Berkeley, he must be.
So again, I can speak to this from a promotions process, and people are judging people every single day. People have very strong opinions about their colleagues in different institutions or in their subfields. And, you know, again, I'm dealing in, you know, focus on teeny tiny area of whatever it might be. That's what they're getting promoted on. How they interact with their colleagues at conferences. Do they go to conferences? Do they give good presentations at conferences? You know, for example, I hear things or I read things in letters such as, you know, Dr. X is an absolutely gifted teacher. I have seen her speak and I've also seen her teach in a classroom and she's absolutely phenomenal. So, and these are colleagues or their peers saying these things about them. The work that your colleague, your PI or boss does in terms of committee work, which is an expectation once you get to once you're a faculty member. So be it their professional society, are they involved, are they not involved? Because again, I get the letters where I have no idea who this person is, I've never heard of them, and I've never seen them. So those kinds of things, that they're good collaborators, if that's a thing in your area. Do they get out? Are they collegial with their friends? Do they give good talks? Do they give back? And again, have their trainees gone on to be great people and being successful PIs? So it may not be, you know, everything to do with that one person, but maybe their faculty, their postdoc from several years ago is now working with that person and they think they're great. So it's everything that a faculty member is judged on, everything that they do or don't do. And so that's how your colleagues or people will judge your PI or everybody else. Does that answer your question? Kind of. It's more than just science. That's what I will tell you. Science is a huge part of it, and you have to be doing great science, but equally you have to be a great person as well, I think.
So
I have another question which is very much different, so maybe I should read it first.
So the question was how long?
Is like, I mean, can we defend our PhD something like 2011 and then apply for postdoc in 2016?
You did, right?
Well, so I did my PhD and then did the postdoc straight after. I think it would, probably the further, I imagine it depends what you're doing between finishing your PhD and starting a postdoc. If you're working in a lab role in industry, then I could see probably a transition back into research might be fairly straightforward. Also, if you were a computational researcher and you were in a computational job and then went into research, then as a postdoc, I could imagine that would be doable. So I think it kind of depends on the specific situation, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think generally up to 3 years gap should be okay, but when it gets longer, it becomes more difficult to go back. Yeah. It's same as like even if you finish your postdoc and if you want to go to industry and then you decide that industry is not good for me, I want to go back to academia. If you stay in industry for too long, it would be very difficult to go back to academia. So I suppose like 3 years rule of thumb should be okay.
I think, you know, if you step out, I mean, we see how fast science is moving every single day, that you don't want to, you know, if you leave and go and do something else, are you going to be in touch with what's going on right now? Like, you know, my PhD work is completely outdated and being surpassed since, you know, that was several years ago. And so staying out too long is, you're not going to be as attractive as somebody that has the latest technique for that lab or, you know, area of interest.
Yeah, one thing you should be aware of is some of the postdoc applications. They have a very defined how.
Like, for example, the outlet that you can try, it must be 2 years at most, but some universities, they're
Yeah.
not signing.
Yeah, as Tom said, it depends on your field. So yeah, in my field, you want to kind of, a lot of the postdoc applications are, you have to be a year to 2 years after your PhD or 3 years max for a lot of the applications, and only 1 or 2 are beyond that. So that's the only thing I can think of that it depends on what you've done. So if you've left research, that doesn't count as your like research time. If you've carried on in the same lab, then they count that as research time. So something to bear in mind.
Yeah, even if you're in industry, that should count. I mean, if you're doing research, let's say if you are just changing the field entirely.
Tenure track, for example, at a university or something, and not saying no to research programs. It's thing that counts.
Yeah, that should be fine, I think.
You want to ask your second question too? Or?
Yeah.
And then we'll get the question over there. Yeah.
My second question would be, what is the chance of those people who are more or less in qualitative jobs rather than quantitative jobs, like things like humanities, like media studies, and things like that, that these type of fields, how far do they have a chance for postdoc? For instance, university like MIT, which is more or less, let's say, quantitative.
Well, so we're all kind of biomedical type science. So we don't have any humanities or social science people here, but so I don't know about that.
I think the funding is different and the PhDs are a lot longer. So I think the structure of the fellowship applications and the job market is very different between kind of biological sciences and social sciences. So it'd be good to talk to people that are academics, that are professors in that department, and see how they did it. And that's the best way of gauging how you should do things. So if there's like a senior person in your field, you can just drop them an email, for a coffee and have a chat with them and see how they did it. Because they might have taken a lot longer, because humanities applications are going to do take longer.
I think postdocs are very uncommon pretty much outside of biomedical sciences. You know, I have a friend that is in the, she's a psychologist, and she went straight from a PhD to assistant professor. So it's a very different ball game. So.
Right. So my question is 2 parts, and it may have been covered earlier. I couldn't comment the beginning, so I can't understand. But anyway, here's my question. It has to do with the relationship between your PhD thesis research project and your postdoctoral research project. How close should they be? And the second part is, supposing they're not close, how do you persuade somebody that you have to take you in this different project to which you don't have the specific skills?
So from my experience, I think it's better to be in the similar field, but the projects can be different, because if they are different enough, then it shows a sign that you can do different. When you are applying for faculty positions, then it shows that, yeah, you can do different things, just not one thing sticking, So, but at the same time, not too different, then it'll be hard to sell, whatever. So I think best case scenario would be to be in the field you are in, but like do slightly different things. And that's what my PhD mentor told me when I was going for postdoc. And it's also very, I mean, if you are doing same things again in the postdoc, it can be problematic to your PhD advisor and also your postdoc advisor, right? So, so you have to find your own niche and use the techniques you have learned in the PhD and apply it for the postdoc. That's what I think.
So I think in my case it was exactly the same. So I finished my PhD and I was working on heat transfer in nanofluid. And then for a postdoc, it was this project for two-phase flow heat transfer, which I had no idea what is it. And so when I talked to this guy, the supervisor that I am working here, I was like, oh, you know, my background was nanofluid. I have no experience with two-phase flow. And he was like, so what? You're going to stick to nanofluid for the rest of your life? Which was, you know, like, so it was difficult for me at first. I mean, obviously, if you follow what you have been doing during your PhD, during a postdoc, you can get more publication, you can publish more easily, you know the people in the field. While, like, when you get to the new area, at least you have to spend a year to learn what's going on. And then, I mean, it just makes the path a bit more difficult, but at the same time, it shows that you have a skill to handle basically two areas of research. Well, it was like general heat transfer, which was a, you know, it was like the, yeah.
As a postdoc, in my experience, you have a fair amount of freedom. So you can go in with a rough idea about what you're interested in and your past experience. And then, you know, I think it's good to be learning new skills, and you'll be wanting to do things that you don't know and learning new stuff from the people in the lab. Were you thinking about a more extreme change, or?
I completely understand how one has to continuously learn and expand skill set. But then on the other hand, there is this problem that you're applying and other people are also applying, and maybe those other people have more of the specific skill sets, and doesn't that put me at a disadvantage? I'm struggling with this tension between expanding my skill set and being competitive with the positions I apply.
Yeah.
So this is the tension that I'm struggling with.
I think if you can convince somebody in your cover letter or email or phone conversation or conference post or meetup that you have a small clue about what they're doing, you know, that you can have an intelligent conversation to some extent about the new area, then that's going to be convincing. If you can, what can you bring to their lab that they don't have, and why are you interested in this, going in this area? You know, what is it? Why is it of interest to you? And, you know, what do you hope to get from that? So I don't think you can just blindly apply, say, here's my CV as I stand, and not offer them anything, or, and you know, the idea that you do understand what they're doing to some extent.
Yeah, can I talk just one more thing? When you write a cover letter, you can talk about your interest, that you're interested in this lab, then you talk about yourself, what you have done, and then you talk about other persons, the person you are applying to, their lab, what they do, and how it interests you, and how you can contribute to their lab. And that kind of letter will help you get into their lab, if you can find a connection between your interest and their interest.
Yeah.
You probably have to do the same thing when you want to become an outlet as well. So it's all about telling that institute what makes you valuable to that team. So in my case, it was a technique, but then it grew into another project as well. So if you're some biological labs, and I love mathematicians because people are building their labs and they need people that can do this, but it doesn't mean you only have to do that one thing. You can then do something else. So if you're thinking about changing fields, sometimes they would really like to have somebody with your knowledge base, because it will work in bi-directional way. They can use you and you can use them to learn a new skill set. So I think nowadays, I think people do like to have people with a different background, because it really adds something to the lab, and it really makes them competitive because they have someone with a really unique skill set that can build their lab in a different way. So it's a good thing now.
I think this actually brings up a very good point, getting back to, looking for a good postdoc, which is what kind of you said earlier, is you need to, from your interview, get an inkling of whether a PI is ultimately going to let you run with your little idea. I understand from 9 to 5, they may want you to work on their R1 or whatever it might be. But are they going to give you that space or time, or let you use their resources, or even apply for funding to do your own project and ultimately leave their lab with your own work? Because there's a lot of PIs out there, and not to be negative Nelly, but it's true, where they pretty much say, no, the only thing, I've hired you to work on my R1, and then I will ask you to write, help me write the new aims for my next R1, and no, actually you can't take any of your work with you when you leave. And I had a very good friend who, basically was the backbone of this lab in Philadelphia. She, helped her PI get another R1, with all her ideas, all of her aims. She created the cell lines, everything, and her PI wouldn't let her take anything with her. So that's just something to be really cautious about when you're looking for a postdoc. Try and figure that out from your conversations with the PI. And again, as was said, talking to people that have been in the lab before.
We have time for one more question.
I'll just quickly add one comment about, and this only really applies to people in computational fields, but I think that it can be quite nice. It can give you an edge and show, maybe in your situation, that you understand what's going on in the lab. Is if there's if you're in a computational field and there's a public repository with lab code, then on GitHub you can start contributing to the code, and I think that's a nice way of kind of getting involved with the lab and showing you know what's going on in there, and might give you an edge in a job in a postdoc application.
All right, we have time for one more question. Yes, sir.
So can you guys comment on what are the best ways to network during your conference?
I had a poster session, and basically I just what I did is I went to the poster sessions of the people I really liked and I wanted to work for. So I got to speak to their postdocs and their PhD students, and just and I asked 2 of them out for lunch. So that's another way of doing it. It can be quite daunting with the PIs because sometimes they're surrounded by other people. So I'd advise you to contact them in advance and ask them to come to your poster. Yeah, the best way of doing it are small conferences as well. They're the really good ones. I went to an excellent small conference where it was only the people in my field, and it was amazing, and it was a whole week, and I got to know all the PIs in my field. I got to listen to all the great talks, and now I know them all. So when I see them in a really big conference, I say hi and stuff. So I think a small conference, if you can find one, and there's loads of funding out there to go to conferences, so I would advise you to go to one. Try and give a talk. Definitely, that will really get your name kind of out there. And if in the social hours, really make the effort to stay out if you can, and meet as many people as possible. Just be yourself. That's the most important.
I think it's very important to be in touch with the people that you want to meet before the conference. Send them an email, like go through the program of the conference and see which of these person interests you and they are working in the same area, and then send them an email and tell them that you are there, you're going to present. If they have time, they can come to your presentation, and also if you can grab a coffee or something, I think that would help a lot.
The other thing is, again, scientists oftentimes are introverts, not extroverts, so this concept of networking can actually be quite scary. I hate personally walking into a room full of people and going, oh my God, I've got to talk to somebody. But somebody once said to me, find the other person that's standing on their own, looking equally scared and terrified, and start with that person, rather than, that circle that you have to try and, how do I get into that circle? And the other thing that you could consider, and again, I know you're busy doing something, but get involved in the professional society that is organizing the conference, if that's applicable. Even if it's, they often have young investigators breakfasts or lunches or whatever. Definitely go to them, but see, they're always looking for people to help do these things, and it could be anything. and just say, I'd like to get involved, because what that does, you know how when you have a job, it's easier to talk to people because you're either directing or asking, or people are asking you. So, it's a start, and it can definitely help break the ice in terms of getting out there and getting network. Plus, it gets your name out there, giving back. It starts to establish your reputation.
Yeah, I totally agree with Zoe. If I ever thought that what I was doing at conferences was networking, I would be kind of really anxious. I would forget what I was saying, and I'm really not the kind of person that enjoys doing that. And so for me, it's always been just finding people who I enjoy, to chat to. I think it's useful going out for the social, when people go out for drinks in the evening, whether or not you drink alcohol, I think it's worth going along and hanging out with people. And once you know one or two people, they tend to have a bunch of friends. So, you speak to the awkward person in the room, and it turns out that they've got a bunch of friends, and it becomes then very easy to meet the people they're with. And so, I never think of what I'm doing as networking. I just think of it as finding people to hang out with while I'm at a conference.
It happened with me. I was in a conference, and I went to a poster, and I talked to this grad student, and who happened to be in this lab where I interviewed later, like after 2 years. And he knew me, and I reminded him of, and he was like, oh yeah, I met you before, and he put some good words for me, like for this, so to get the position. So it definitely helps. If you have free time, just spend some time looking at the brochure and find the right area you're interested in, find the faculties who are presenting, or like grad students even presenting, and make connections with them. If not PI, then maybe grad students can also make a connection.
And I think the last point is that, don't be afraid of asking your supervisor to put you in touch with the people that he knows, because that's very important. And most of the students, they are afraid. But if you're at the conferences and your supervisor talking to the people, ask him to introduce you as well. And most of the supervisor does that. And I think that's very helpful as well.
Yep. And just to get back to LinkedIn profiles, these people that you meet at your conference or wherever, friend them, or whatever the appropriate term is for friending somebody on LinkedIn. And, as they get a new paper, oftentimes people put up their paper on LinkedIn, or they get a new job, or they move somewhere. It takes 2 seconds to send them an email saying, hey, congratulations on your new paper. That's really great, or that's really interesting work. I'm actually doing something. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Because it's a really nice way of staying in touch with people, even if you don't get to another that conference for 1 or 2 years. Again, that person may be somebody that ultimately you could end up interviewing with, or they could be talking to you or talking about you to somebody else. So, use LinkedIn cleverly to stay up to date with what people are doing. It takes no seconds to hit the thumb thing, and because we all love it, we all go to see who's liked the fact that we got a promotion, and when they see your name popping up, they're like, oh yeah, I remember him. And one step further is send them the email. So
all right, thank you so much to our panelists. Help me join me in thanking them. All right. I just want to point out a couple of things. I want to thank our sponsors for the event, the MIT Graduate Student Council, Global Education Career Development, and the Office of the Vice President for Research.